Thank you all for having us to speak today. We're going to be talking about the Great British Mollusca Types, a union database for the UK, and there's three of us in the audience. James, for any technical questions, more than what's your favourite mollusk. But this is a real team project, so actually it could be any of us presenting this today. And just say this was funded by the John Ellerman Foundation, so thank you very much to them. So in order to tell you about our type mollusk database, I should probably tell you what a mollusk is and what a type is. You all know what a mollusk is, even if you don't know you do. So they're a very diverse and ancient group of terrestrial and aquatic animals. They're soft-bodied, usually with a shell. So slugs and snails, squid and octopus, seashells. There's about 85,000 known species and several thousand, possibly many, many more, still to be described. So what is a type? Well, that's slightly more complicated. And type specimens are the vouchers used when you describe a new species. And this material is usually the most important to a museum. It's often their prized material, and it's the most important scientifically. It's the things that your visitors will want to see. It's the things that people want to know about when they email you or get in touch with your web forums. And basically, if you give something a new scientific name, a new Latin name, these are the physical objects, the animals that go with that name to prove that what that animal is. And this concept has been applied since the late 19th century. So why did we think the need for this project? Well, there's been a real loss, as we all know, of specialist staff in UK museums, loss of specialist expertise and subject expertise. And when you lose that expertise, you lose the links to the collection. So you have these important type mollusks sitting in collections and no real access or knowledge about them in local and regional museums. And we really wanted to raise the profile of these underused collections to the general public, to local people, and to the scientific community. There was a real assumed knowledge from the scientific community that we noticed coming from national museums that we had all the important stuff. And this is slightly unique to the UK, but actually there are important, very important scientific material, type specimens, in pretty much all of the big local and regional natural history museums. And no one really had any idea of where this material was. Stuff had been moved around over the last 200 plus years, and we really wanted to try and capture that. So for our stage one project, funded by John Ellerman Foundation, we chose 7 project partners scattered across the UK, and we chose them for several reasons. We knew already that they held type material. If you're going to do it, you may as well go where you know there is stuff, with real recognized international importance. Importantly for us and our funding body, they had no specialized malacological curators, so no mollusk specialists, and that was a real stumbling block to the scientific community being able to engage with those specimens. And there's a real inability to be able to search for these specimens, and often the curators in charge didn't really know how to look through these collections. The project team, we are the only specialist mollusk curators in the UK. And it was quite important to point that out early on, because if you're going to ask your bosses that you're going to, tell your bosses you're going to spend time working on other people's collections, you need a good reason why you're doing that. So what did we want to achieve? Well, we wanted to identify, secure, and promote these scientifically important and valuable specimens. We want to highlight the importance to the scientific community, but also to the local community and the institutions themselves. We wanted to build capacity through training, and that was quite a big part of our project, working with our local organisations, passing on knowledge, sharing resources. And we want to strengthen the networks between our museums. And we want to make this information accessible to a worldwide community, especially a scientific community, and to make sure that we preserve this information to safeguard for future generations.
Yes, that's what we set out to do. And this is more or less how we did it. So we started with a training workshop. We brought everybody together in Cardiff, where we started, and that was the first time many of us had met and worked together. And we had what was possibly the first workshop on discovering mollusk-type material in your collections. So it was very bespoke, and the feedback we got from it was very good. It covered some of these quite specific things in detail, but always with a view to how they could be used in other areas of the museums involved in their work, documentation and storage, and outreach and so on. Then we had to go forth and multiply, and we visited as a team, one of us from London, one of us from Cardiff in each instance. We visited all the different museums, and we spent up to a few days working in their collections with the curators there. And people talk about the fear of robots replacing our jobs. I think curators would, although some of their tasks could be automated, some of them would be very difficult to replace with artificial intelligence, simply because they've got such a great and unique knowledge of where types and other specimens are in their collections. So we worked with them throughout the whole process, even when we were borrowing material to take to Cardiff or London for further study. There's an example of a type specimen, often very straightforward, where it is sometimes less straightforward. Luckily, that one's figured in the original description, and you can even count the spots on it to be sure that that's the same specimen. So the digitization, and then going on to the preservation of each specimen, involved us collecting what was digitally available about each of these specimens already from different museums, and bringing that together. In many cases, there was very little or none, so we had to start from scratch. Then we did the photography, and we were all photographers to some extent, and we copy and save the information in several different formats and in different places. And we gave the data back to each of the partners as well, so they have a copy, and some of it is appearing on their sites through their own content management systems as well. And finally, we developed the website, and we promoted the project as we went along on social media and in conferences as well. So this is what the website looked like. We'll be demonstrating it again afterwards, and we had it running at lunchtime as well. But you can visit it, and you can find mollusks. You can search them by locality. You can search them by a particular collector, or if your tastes are a bit more specific, there are lots of other fields to choose from as well. And that data is all stored currently at the National Museum of Wales, and in line with our policy. And Jim's been very good in checking people out as to what extent we're following the Digital Preservation Coalition standards, and generally pretty closely, it seems. In future, we want to develop this a bit further, which we've been doing over the last few months, but we'd particularly like to join into the global aggregators, which I suppose are a bit like the European network in some ways, which relate to mollusks worldwide, and they will connect back, hopefully in a two-way linkage to the specimens in each museum. And include some DOIs as well as the unique URLs we've already got. That's just, I'm flashing that up quickly to show you that these types in these museums around Britain are not just purely British, in the same way that the British Museum contains stuff from all over our sphere of influence in the past. And they're not purely a late Victorian phenomenon either. Bringing all this information together for the very first time gave us this great data set to analyze as well. It's interesting that apart from that mid-Victorian, late Victorian peak, there's been a kind of upsurge in the late 20th century, and some museums have been more active in that than others. We did encounter a few problems, but I think generally we vanquished them, didn't we, John? So we can talk more about those with anyone who wants to.
I mean, we really learned a lot during this. You know, we brought some specialist knowledge, but there was also the specialist knowledge of each individual institution, and together we really were stronger. And we managed to share knowledge in every direction, and we all learned so much from it. And I think there's also a slight case of breaking down barriers, that whether they were perceived barriers between regional, local and nationals, or actual barriers, by putting names to faces, I think we were all a lot more confident in talking to our peers, some of which we'd only emailed in the past. And it was originally built as a scientific tool to identify types to the scientific community, but actually it's become much more than that. We found it's been really useful for local institutions in helping with their inquiry load. It's given them the knowledge to deal with these. It's given them the confidence to deal with these. It's led to two third impress peer-reviewed papers. We've also expanded this out to looking at the handwriting in these associated mollusk collections. The handwriting is obviously very important when you're trying to verify specimens, when you're looking at documentation and chains of ownership. So we have, at the moment, a very basic handwriting portal, but we're hoping to update that. Also tracing historical collections. So as I was saying, no one really knew where different personal collections have been moved to over the last 300 years. So we've set up a page trying to trace these, and we're updating them all the time. Only last week we added a few more names and places to this. And we're hoping that it will assist in helping to designate collections, because each of these individual institutions has unique, scientifically important, irreplaceable material, and we hope that it'll help to shine a light onto their importance. Looking ahead, we intend to carry on rather selfishly because it helps our own personal research, but also we see the greatness and the importance of this for the scientific community. But how we do that will depend on funding. We've actually just applied for a second round of funding, and we're waiting to hear. You can see the museums below. These are the next lot of museums who've all would like to be involved if a second tranche happens. And at the moment, we think, exclude the NHM because we have quite a lot of types, but at the moment, we think we have 50% coverage of all the mollusk types in the UK. And if we manage to get these extra institutions involved, we think we'll get 95% coverage as well, which is something we'd be really pleased to do. And again, thank you to the John Ellerman Foundation, to all the curators and partners, and the staff at NHM and Cardiff as well for all their support. So thank you very much.